Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, how does soil temperature affect decisions in your fields? Dylan shares soybean yields and variety information. Ben shares corn plot information and how they stack up against each other. Why mold is a yield limiting factor, but what can you do to maintain yield potential? And we are still in great supply of ultra early soft red winter wheat.
Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Lynn and Dylan, and I think we're going to start with Lynn today.
We're discussing before production here about some soil temps going on in the countryside here, because we're going to have some nighttime lows, and here coming up we're going to have a little bit of an extended cool streak for a week or so. So as we're looking at 4-inch soil temps, we are as we get into that first part of October, we will see some 4-inch soil temps drop that below that 50 mark. Why is that important to us? You know, that's when we start to have the conversations on looking at fall anhydrous, looking at what our soil temps are for potentially seeding some wheat or other cover crops of that nature. So that's the first time that we're probably going to drop below that 50-degree threshold. But looking out to that extended forecast, when we're looking at the 4-inch soil temps by the 11th of October, which is the farthest that the mesonet goes out, we're going to be right back into that 61-degree threshold. So what does that mean? Keep harvesting. If you're done and worried about fall anhydrous, maybe we're not quite there yet. We still have a little bit of need more lead time there with the soil temps to make sure that we're at that 50 degrees and falling, so that way we're not underutilizing our fall applied anhydrous when we're looking for our nitrogen plan.
Yeah, that works in pretty decent with having enough time to get on your fall burn downs too. I think that's going to be a bigger play this coming year, with guys moving more to the away from conventional tillage, more towards minimum till or no-till style strategies. The high-speed discs or the vertical till machines just don't do a great job of getting rid of the weeds. So I think there's going to be more guys that are out there. And one of the main chemicals we worry about with 50 degrees and lower overnight temps is Roundup. So if you're going out there and you're trying to kill grass with Roundup, I mean, that'd be the predominant reason that you'd be wanting to run Roundup in the tank, is trying to knock grasses out. But that'd be something definitely to be thinking about, getting those style of applications done before the anhydrous bar rolls. Yeah,
and when we're looking at that too, so if our soil temp is going to climb back up, obviously we're getting great GDUs, so your fall winter annual emergence potentially could come as soon as that crop's off. Right now we're entering a stage of harvest where we're hot and heavy. There's going to be no competition from a growing crop that's going to get all the maximum light penetration. So when you're looking at your fall panicum and some of those other winter annuals that we tend to deal with that emerge here in the fall, throwing down a good residual or burn down plus residual as we push through this. Because if we have, what we've seen before is, you might be able to burn that down and we do a decent job of burn down, but if we have an extended warmer fall period like we did last year, some of those products we actually needed to throw a little bit longer residual because it burnt through that and the next flush took over. And like you said, when we're talking about specifically vertical till, if you're doing a 0 or 1 degree gang angle on that, it doesn't really do a good job of taking that root or taking that plant and getting the roots and then chopping that up. It just does a pretty decent job of staying right on the surface, especially when you're talking about different plants. When you're dealing with rhizomes, anything below ground, if you're not taking care of that, and really from a tillage perspective, unless you're doing deep tillage and burying that, a fall application of herbicide is the best, because you're actually getting down there and killing those rhizomes and making sure that doesn't continue to multiply across the field.
And I think too, we're kind of seeing more weed escapes as we go into fall, but I think some of that too is guys use vertical till machines as like a field cultivator this spring, and like you said, we weren't able to get those roots up and out of the ground, and I think the vertical till kind of just diced them up and spread everything out, and now we're starting to see that effect.
Yeah. Yep. Soybean fields. There's a lot of clean fields out there, but there's a lot of dirty fields out there too, and that's definitely something a fall application may help reduce some of that, because we'll be starting cleaner for a longer period of time. I would definitely be thinking. So we're not trying to put all of our pressure on our first burn down or our first post pass.
And then, I mean, another aspect here that we could talk about probably for a whole nother episode is the alternate host. When we look at some of the winter annuals being alternate hosts for soybean cysts, you know, the pennycress is one that comes to mind in that. So not only from a weed standpoint, you know, that robbing yield from the plant and competition, but also being an alternative host to other pests as well is a really good reason to get out there and try to knock that in the head before it takes off too bad.
Completely agree. Dylan, we got some bean yields that are starting to come off locally here. What are guys seeing? What are you seeing? What's things look like out there?
Yeah, so first I guess we'll start off with, we've got some fields coming off for seed production, and those are looking fantastic. Guys have been really happy. The quality looks good. The samples we've been getting in, or the beans coming into West Point. So that's finally starting to get taken off, especially guys up north. But like Iowa City and West area, those are really going on our Neptunes and Mercuries as early beans, and those are, guys have been really happy. We had a grower, his Mercuries did 72 over like 160 acres, so that he was very excited with that. And then as we kind of move this direction, we've got the new Osage, a 25 series 2.6. Across the scales, it did 82, and that was across a big portion of acres, so that grower was extremely happy.
Let's talk about that Osage just a little bit. What makes that Osage different? I mean, it's not different than the old Osage, but I mean, talk about what makes that Osage unique, I guess.
Yeah, so that Osage is Peking, so that is a big hot topic in today's market. So we have another protection of that soybean cyst nematode that's very common anymore, and it's got great yield potential. We always talk about that potential yield drag that we're having, but we're just not seeing it in these new soybean varieties. So
yeah, I actually was talking to the dealer that would have sold those Osages at the beginning of the week, and he said they're standing perfectly. They look gorgeous. They're gonna be one of the ones that are gonna definitely probably take the Apache spot when it comes to, you know, that late group to mid group 2 time frame from a sales standpoint. We got plenty of supply on those products. That Osage looks like it's going to be a stud for sure.
It's going to be a tough one to, you know, we've talked about it before with this nematode with the Pekings and rotating out. It's going to be really hard to keep guys from not wanting that year after year just because of its yield potential. But once again, like I said, we need to protect that utility of Peking because there's nothing really on the horizon. But there's definitely something that has happened, like to Dylan's point, with the yield drag that was associated with Peking and being able to finally overcome that yield penalty with Peking. So pretty exciting, especially in that maturity too. I mean, that's a maturity for us. Selfishly, sells really well across a broad footprint of our portfolio here at Merschman Seeds.
Yep.
So then we've got another Cherokee that came off for seed production in the West Point area, which is kind of on the earlier side, being a 2.9, but the grower was extremely happy. They were doing around that 75 mark across 150 acres. So nothing to complain about there as they move on to those later maturities. It was able to get them started, so they were extremely happy with that bean. So then we've got a Lincoln, which has been kind of a hot topic as of late. You know, we've had some sudden death issues that have kind of popped up here and there on those early planted beans, those wetter soil types. But the growers have been beyond excited of what that yield potential has been bringing in.
Yeah, this one had us sitting on our seats to see how well these beans were going to come off. If they're going to be 50 bushel beans, if they're going to be 60 bushel beans, but how well. We had two different field scenarios where everybody in the coffee shops were talking about, all the other farmers were talking and really worried about, you know, if I had sudden death that bad, how bad would they yield, or what kind of yield penalty would we have? But how'd the first one turn out, and how'd the second one turn out?
Yeah, so that field we were all kind of watching on did between like the mid 70 range. Up to even the 80s, so that was beyond exciting. And the standability on these Lincolns is fantastic. We know that they're kind of a mainline bean, so they need to be pushed to that 15 to 20 inch rows. So that's something to keep track of. But the yield just keeps getting better and better. We had a fantastic year last year with them, and we've got local growers too. They're running the mid 80s, so guys are really happy with this bean, and they're anxious to even get started with them for next year.
Yeah, so it's one of those deals where it's a super strong yielder, right? We were worried that we were going to see 60 bushel beans out of these fields that were heavily infested with sudden death, but in 2 different reports, I got one from one grower and one from the other. It was 79, and the other one said that lock, stock, barrel 80, which is absolutely unbelievable. So
yeah, and then to add to that, up by the Wayland area north of Mount Pleasant, they were doing 88 across the 70-acre field, and that was across the scales. So they were beyond excited. So
to me right there, I mean, it's one that if you have a history of sudden death and have a really, really high pressure, either we don't plant that bean or we wait for a little bit later in the season when we got a little bit higher ground temperature, little less wet conditions to plant into. But I think it's one that it's hard to ignore it from the lineup, especially if you're in, if you fall into that 2.6 to 3.2 range. That's a bean that you really need to consider. Like you said, mainline bean. Maybe we don't put it on our best of the best, or something that's not well drained. Put it on something that's a decent run, but has maybe just a little bit tougher acre to it, but still has a really high yield potential. Thinking that a lot of fields around the 60 to 65 CSR type ground that has 80 bushel potential in spots, but maybe you need to be a little bit more defensive on that. I think that's a bean that's probably going to fit that mold really, really good. And then you pair that with something like the Cherokee that has a fantastic disease package and agronomic package for that high yielding acre, or an acre that's maybe a little bit more susceptible to sudden death. And you got a great 1-2 punch there.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. So I think we're going to sell a lot of Lincolns this year. They're a fantastic bean. I was a little bit nervous, but like I said, we're on the right track.
Just think if it's smacked that bad by sudden death and still yields that much. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know we farm. It's always the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but man, that could have been just an insane field average if that wouldn't have. Because we know it takes away yield. That stuff's in us super early, and just left a lot of weight out there, but left a lot of weight and still coming in the 70s for still an early bean for this area to boot. So,
yep. What else we got over there, Dylan?
And the last one I wanted to hit on is the McKinley, which is a 3.2. It did 82 across a couple hundred acres. So it's another fantastic bean. Remember, it's related to the Kennedy. So if you really like that Kennedy bean, it's a little bit of an earlier option.
Yep, absolutely. I've heard some reports on some Jeffersons too, of guys getting started on Jeffersons. Phenomenal yield, kind of running right there in that upper 70s, lower 80s. We'll wait for field averages before we'll start sharing some of those. But I kind of wanted to go over, we have a few corn plots that have came in so far. I just kind of want to read off 1, 2, 3 on how the Merschman corn's stacking up against each other and against some of the competitors here. So we have a Cumberland, Illinois. The 113 day went number 1, the 115 day the 2415C went number 2, and the 2414C went number 3 in that plot there. And those are all running kind of in that 260, 259 area. We have a Brunswick, Missouri plot that rolled off, and these are kind of in that 282 to 274. The 113 day went 282. The 112 day, our brand new 112 day, did 281, and then the third place was the 111 day. The 111 day is holding up really, really well in the Missouri plots that have came off so far. Then we roll into Lamar, Missouri. 111 day was number 1. The 113 day was number 2. The 112 day was number 3. That's in a 150, 160 bushel yield environment there. We got Quarter, Missouri. We had the 111 day, blow the doors off stuff at 320 bushel an acre. The next best was 292 with the 115T, the 2515T that we had there. And then number 3 rolls in at our 2512. That was at 284. Then we roll into Lamont, Missouri. We're looking at a 200 to 216 bushel per acre plot there, where the 2415C went number 1, the 2411C went number 2, and the 2413 went number 3. And then that gets us back to the beginning there. So those are the plots that we have in so far. You have a page right there. You kind of want to talk about which hybrids out of these that came off, what's the test weight look like? I know test weight is just a function of volume, but some guys really like super heavy test weight corn. Is there anything that's sticking out? Anything that's contradicting what we've said in the past? Is there a product that you like the most for test weight at this point?
Yeah, so the one that really sticks out to me is the 113 day. We've kind of said it since the beginning, but we're seeing 59 to 61 in the plots that have came in, and even the 111 day, we kind of thought maybe it might have a little bit of a lighter tick of test weight, but it's coming in at 58 to 60, yep. Pretty steady. So really, if you're worried about test weight on any of these products, they're all going to have strong test weight.
Yep, I would say I would have to agree with what we've seen so far on what we've harvested on our own acres, that a lot of 61, 62 pound test weight on the 113 day, a lot of stuff that's edging the 60 pound test weight on the 111 day. So everything is doing as it is planned, yep, so far. The only other thing I had, and you mentioned it when you were talking about, we were talking about samples that have came in. I have a picture I want to throw up. And we saw this out of a couple different seed growers. This year is a tough year for white mold. What you could see is the black specks in the back of the monitor, or the back of the sight glass behind you sitting in the combine. Keep an eye out for fields that have that white mold that's coming in the grain sample. Those are going to be fields that you're going to be fighting in a corn-soybean rotation in 2 years. If the most yield limiting factor was the white mold, definitely be paying attention to the yield maps, and put that in your notes for 2 years from now, that okay, these are the areas that may get a Cobra application at R1. These are the areas that may get an Endura application at R1. These are the areas of the field that we may use contans on in the fall to try to degrade some of that white mold fruiting body that doesn't ever go away. Once it's in the soil, it seems like it's there forever, unless you're using products like contans to start dissolve and destroy that style of product. There's also crop residue breakdown style products. Those may be something that comes into play where you're actively putting biology out there that's going to start working on degrading and breaking down the organic material that's out in that field. So
all things you can do this fall too.
All things you can do this fall.
In one pass.
Yep. So those are the areas I'd be focusing on. It just came as a huge surprise. I don't know that I've ever seen the sclerotinia, the fruiting body. I've never seen them quite as big as what they are in this field. And the field yielded through it. I mean, I think this field did in the mid to lower 60s. But it's something to keep an eye out on, and it's something that, there's fall, when the combine's running, you're already planning for everything in the spring. So, planting season starts when the combine rolls, because you're literally making notes, making decisions, and working your way through what problems you're going to be trying to accomplish next year. So,
no, I think that's a great point, because we get conversations related to seed treatment as far as white mold goes, and from our perspective, we've thrown the kitchen sink at white mold, but it's such a devastating yield limiting factor that you have to get to a point where you're taking multi-steps to go after it. That seed treatment alone is not something that can provide you the utmost protection, and even the genetic ability of the plant. I mean, there's just not enough genetic resistance in any bean variety out there to overcome that. It's just too much. So you have to kind of help spoon feed this plant through that infection, and making sure that you're getting a decent yield on the backside.
Right, and there's a difference from a varietal standpoint. For sure, and our reps know. Like if you're concerned about white mold and you want the best white mold products out there, get a hold of our reps, and they can walk you through some of our older products, like the Chickasaw, for example. That's one that I would never plant in a field that has heavy pressure, because that thing's such a big bushy bean that there's not a lot of air movement, and that's perfectly conducive to white mold. The last thing that I wanted to mention before you take us out of here is where we're getting the results are slowly starting to trickle in on this. We had a full episode on hopper throttle last week. I got a report that, and we have to confirm stuff yet, but it was a 10 bushel advantage where the Merschman hopper throttle ether soybean product was used compared to the untreated check. So we'll get some confirmation on that, but that matches up perfectly with what Iowa State's unpublished data had last year. So very, very exciting things when it comes to planning for next year.
For sure. It's a great time to plan for next year.
Yep.
Seed is coming in. Orders are coming in hot and heavy for the folks that are on the fence on wheat. We still have a great supply of wheat. Binti is looking really strong in the sales department. Millie is looking really strong in the sales department. So if you've got any last minute wheat needs from anywhere here, I mean, we're still plenty early on the
We have lots of Maddie too.
And we do have lots of Maddie. So
we can cover you from hyper early, ultra early, all the way to the number one yielder, number one seller that we got.
Yep. And from that standpoint too, you know, we haven't even hit October. I mean, we've got guys that are very comfortable planning. Even as far north as Rockford, Illinois, planning into November. I mean, I shouldn't say comfortable. They'll do it, but you know, there's still a lot of good time left to get wheat in. So if harvest is going well, you're catching rain, especially with our listeners down south with a hurricane coming up, getting a little extra moisture. Don't forget about wheat in that rotation. Good supply, and we're really excited about the lineup this year.
Absolutely. Take us out of here.
These are bad.
Okay.
These are really bad.
That's par for the course. That's a golf term.
You're a big golf guy.
Big golf guy.
Big golf guy. I can only imagine you on a golf course.
Yep.
It's almost unimaginable.
It is unimaginable.
This might be funnier than the jokes, actually. Yep. What does a farmer wear under his shirt when the autumn weather turns?
No idea.
A harvest.
That's a good one. Warm it up.
One more. This one's worse. What's the best way to fix a broken pumpkin?
No idea.
A pumpkin patch.
Should have thought of that one. That's a good one. Well, thank you very much, Lynn. And I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for getting through Lynn's jokes there. And we hope everybody is having a safe harvest. Remember, there's lots of things going on right now. Be careful around the anhydrous if that's something that's already rolling. Be careful around the equipment. And we appreciate everybody's business, and we will catch you next week.